Benjamin Bartholomew is with us from California on the Skype. Skype, by the way, username lrn.fm. Benjamin, are you going to be attending Bitcoin 2013?
Yeah, I haven't bought my ticket yet. I think we're going to buy that actually later today or tomorrow.
Excellent.
So I'm going to get that, and I think my brother might even be going too.
Awesome. Fantastic.
And then I think my parents are going into San Jose because that's where my sister goes to college. So we're just making a weekend of it.
So what were you calling about tonight?
Well, I've been thinking about Bitcoin a lot, especially with the way it's been going up, and I've been talking to people about Bitcoin. And I think Bitcoin is suffering from its name, just to a small, ever so small degree, in the fact that it's called a coin. And so people in their head have this imagery of a coin. And so I started to think about how divisible it is, and how in some ways it's more like a bar of gold. How these things will be so expensive. I mean, nobody goes out and, I'm going to buy myself a bar of gold. So in the future, you may not go out and buy an entire Bitcoin because that would be crazy. Like, what kind of fool has an entire Bitcoin? How crazy is that? And then I started thinking about, well, how divisible is it compared to something even like a bar of gold? And so I did a little bit of math. And a bar of gold is 400 troy ounces, which is about 12,000 grams of gold. Mm-hmm. But even if you were to add 3 zeros to that, even if you were to make it, 120,000 or whatever, or it still pales or 12 million. It still pales in comparison to the Bitcoin, which each one is divisible into 100 million individual little bits.
That's right. And this is one thing about Bitcoins that I think that verbiage is important, because I think you're addressing that right now, is people say 21 million Bitcoins. Boy, that's just not enough. I mean, Bitcoin's never going to be able to work if there's only 21 million of them. Well, yeah, there's 21 million Bitcoins, like there's 21 million, say, bars of gold, but really there are 2.1 million billion Satoshis. Now, when you start doing...
Satoshi is the smallest unit of Bitcoin.
That's right. When you start doing the math on that, that gives a lot of money to the average to an individual on the planet. Mm-hmm. And it is possible for them to...
Mind-boggling.
Yeah, for them to go and redo the... right, million, billion. We're talking about, we're on the level of how many galaxies are in the universe now. I mean, it's an incredible number. And it's actually possible that if there isn't enough, that they can just add another zero or two in the onto it by changing the protocols.
Yeah,
I really hope there does come a time when you can say, like, I got a Bitcoin, I can retire, because that's just about how many Bitcoins I got.
I got a Bitcoin, and I'll trade it to you for 10 yachts.
Sounds like a deal.
Well, even if you were to, like, I was then trying to take it, okay, well, let's put it into perspective of the current money supply that the Federal Reserve says is in circulation. Currently, there are only $1.18 trillion in circulation.
Wow.
Now, is that M0?
Define that, please. Hold on. What is M0? What is M0?
M0. Oh, God, Ian. I think it's all the money in circulation and all the money in savings accounts.
Okay, so
I'm not ready to answer that question.
Electronic money.
Right, that was my question. Does it include the bank money, or the number you're citing, Benjamin, is that including bank money like
dollars.
In computers? Only physical dollars. Okay.
Physical dollars. But even if you were to take that and turn it, nobody likes pennies, but so if you were to take that and turn it into nickels, you would still only have about 23 trillion nickels, which still pales in comparison to the 2.1 quadrillion of Bitcoin's smallest denomination. And I think Bitcoin has a supreme advantage over, say, something like gold or silver as a future replacement currency, because I can envision a future, and maybe my imagination is limited, but I can envision a future where someone goes and buys a hamburger with Bitcoin. I cannot imagine a future where somebody breaks off a tiny piece of gold or silver and then gets change in gold or silver. I just can't even conceive of that. Oh, we're all going to remember how to deal with gold and have these
and have to calculate
the
current price of gold or silver at the time
versus
that you do
gold
the transaction.
versus gold and silver at the same time,
and then have to somehow make change. It's very
You're not going to have any mathematical at that point. If people are actually carrying around gold and silver, there isn't going to be a dollar, so there's going to be nothing to like fraction it down to. It's going to be subjective value. Like, is this nugget worth that cow or not?
Yeah.
You know.
Or they could have a certain amount of gold and silver in a depository someplace, and they could bump their phones together and move that around. But then what you have to assume at that point is the people that run central banks in this world right now aren't going to do whatever it takes to shut down that place that has that gold and silver.
Whereas Bitcoin's completely decentralized and they can't touch it.
And I think another interesting aspect to the sort of Bitcoin's a digital currency, as though that's different. The dollar is a digital currency that has some real-world representations. So's the Bitcoin. There's no difference.
Dude, the physical Bitcoins that we were giving away a year ago, Mark, they're selling on eBay for $2,000.
Yep, it's crazy.
All right, more coming up here in a moment. Stand by, Benjamin. We'll bring it back. It's Free Talk Live, 855-450 free. Quadrillion. I'm looking here at the list online here. Million, billion, trillion. People don't generally say quadrillion very often. It just doesn't come into the vernacular in any meaningful way. I mean, there's some people that have, governments deal with trillions of dollars. This government deals with trillions of dollars. But a quadrillion is the next level up with 15 zeros instead of just 12 for trillion. And we were talking with Benjamin, and he's back with us, listening on Skype, or actually calling on Skype, rather. And Benjamin, you were comparing the amount of money of U.S. dollars in circulation, both physical and not physical. And I guess you're only looking at physical, but including pennies. I don't know what the non-physical number is. I don't know if we went over that. But it pales in comparison to the number of Bitcoin, or the fractional Bitcoins that we could have, the Satoshis. That you said there were 21 quadrillion Satoshis possible. Is that right?
Right.
It's just hard to even envision what that means. It's just such a big number, and it dwarfs the amount of pennies in circulation. Can you give us the pennies number again? Do you have that handy?
If I remember correctly, it's something like trillion, 100 trillion,
100 trillion,
which is still
Nothing.
1/20th of the possible Bitcoins at their smallest denomination.
Okay.
The point being that but nobody uses pennies. The point is
right.
that
this is what I would say
purely
to people.
academic.
I think we could get rid of pennies at this point and just move to dimes. Just drop pennies and nickels, which are unprofitable for the government, and move to dimes. But let's say that pennies were actually a useful monetary unit that actually did something, and not some stupid, wasteful government program to promote their dead killers. Let's say that it actually matters. If a penny mattered,
the penny only matters to promote Lincoln. All right.
If a penny mattered, and and Satoshis were worth a penny, it would be enough for every person on the planet to have. I mean, there would be enough for every person on the planet to have $3,000. Now, currently, there are, I think, a good portion of people on the planet that are making less than $2 a day.
Yeah, they'd really like $3,000.
There is plenty of money when you're talking about Bitcoins for everybody on the planet.
It was interesting, by the way, looking at the chart. I think on one of the Bitcoin groups on Facebook today, somebody posted a chart which showed the different countries and how much, or different areas of the world, and how much Bitcoin traffic there is there, and buying and such.
It's
and
in Russia.
Moscow was like,
bam! Because they all their Cypriot banks got closed.
That's why
it's dumping their money in.
That's why every night I go to sleep, I wake up, and Bitcoin has jumped up $20.
Right. I thought it was Asia that was doing this, and their penchant for pachinko. No, it's Muscovites that want to get it. But their government's so corrupt they need to have their money on the internet in order to run from them.
So, Benjamin, what else was on your mind tonight?
Well, and one last quick comment on Bitcoin is Mark made it an excellent point that my father has been using with his coworkers. And that is because people are like, well, what is this Bitcoin thing you're talking about? And he goes, he's just saying it's a digital currency, which is basically what you use now with your online banks. It's all stored digitally. There's no money in a bank waiting for you. It's not, your money you're waiting to get. It's all digital. I think when you explain it to people that their current monetary system is digital with a small amount of physical representation,
yep,
then they can get their head wrapped around it a little better. But you guys were, before I called in, you guys were talking about what Rich Paul is dealing with.
Yes,
And,
friend of the show, Rich Paul, facing 81 years in prison for allegedly selling cannabis.
yeah, and now when my brother and I were on trial, I had the opinion, I had told my lawyer repeatedly, because I knew they were going to up our charges, and they did. I told them, look, if I don't know how to do it, but if they hit us with felonies or something, I was just trying to emphasize my conviction to my lawyer. I said, look, I don't care if they hit me with 5 felonies, I'm not taking any plea deals for anything. Having gone through that experience and having a jury convict us and their statement being, well, you might not have broken the law, but just do what the police tell you.
Yeah, I was really sick reading those juror statements.
I can't trust juries anymore. And frankly, I see no... I'm not advocating taking plea deals, but when somebody's holding a sword over your head and saying, but I'm willing to just give you a paper cut instead, go ahead and take the paper cut. There's no sense in falling on your sword at that point. They have the guns, have the willingness to initiate force and use violence, and
they also have no. They've got no skin in the game. There's nothing for them to lose. If they take it to trial and do a terrible job and lose the conviction, oh well. If they go to trial and they send you to prison forever, oh well. Like none of it really matters to these people in their jobs.
You're not playing chicken against the state. It's not like if you take it to them, then they'll lose, and oh no, look at the horrible ramifications of us losing. They'll just move on from it. They don't care.
Yeah, I have a similar feeling about the jurors now too. And the other point I just want to add to the many you made is that the whole process, the whole song and dance, what I call the circus of any court proceedings, is so heavily in favor of the state. You know, you rise when the judge comes in. You know, the prosecutor says all these things and has all the right things. And like, if you're representing yourself, you may look like more not in sync with the process and everything like that. So this is all seen by a jury.
And even here, the defense goes before prosecution in closing statements, so you don't get to rebut them at the very end.
All kinds of stuff. And they have these long drawn out, like, these are the instructions for the jury.
Blah,
this is what you have
blah,
to do.
Blah,
and so
blah. So it's
it doesn't even
hard
matter
to listen
who,
to.
Yeah, if the DA or the defendant goes first, because the state, the judge speaks first, and the judge speaks last.
That's a good point.
And so, and especially in my last trial with the wiretapping, I could see jurors' eyes getting heavy. You know, these long jury instructions that are just basically like threatening the jury to say, like, if you don't do what we say, it is very clear, and all you have to do is look at this line on this piece of paper, and basically these guys will say, if he does this, you do what I say, and he goes to jail. And so it's all just a joke.
Well, maybe we'll be able to get Rich Paul on here to talk about, you know, what's going through his mind, because in the conversations I've had with him, obviously he's heroic, being willing to take this to trial, and his plan, his hope is that he can be the first that I know of. I mean, maybe there's somebody out there that's beaten a dealing charge in the U.S. at some point. I don't know when. I'm sure, hopefully it's happened. But to be the first person in the liberty movement or in the, you know, the recent memorable past who has ever beaten in front of a jury a charge like this. You know, all the jury trials haven't been failures. I mean, Ademo, you were found not guilty in Greenfield, Massachusetts, and by a jury.
I just think for Rich, looking for the guilty, not guilty, that doesn't matter. It's the educational aspect. It's inspiring others. It's showing, educationally other people the injustice in the system. And so,
Benjamin, thanks for your call and thoughts. Appreciate it. 855-450-FREE, the SACL CAI toll-free line. Would you take the plea if you were in Rich's circumstance? He's not doing it, and I'm grateful for it, because it gives us a chance to rally around him and maybe